Welcome to Media-eval, a medieval pop culture podcast, where we talk about how medieval and medieval-inspired movies, TV, and books depict the medieval world. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? And what do they tell us about how modern people see the medieval past? I'm Sarah F. Decker, a medieval historian, and today Ollie Brady is back to talk about a classic, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Hi, Ollie.
Hey, Sarah. I'm delighted to be back. And I'm delighted that when I do get to come back, I get to talk about a movie that I genuinely enjoy, hate 45 minutes in the middle of it, which shouldn't be there and doesn't need to be there. And, Sarah.
Are you sure you wouldn't rather talk about Headhunter again?
Listen, Headhunter was a breezy 71 minutes. And by breezy, I mean 71 minutes that felt like 4 hours. This is conservatively 4 hours. And could be cut down to a movie that was an hour and a half long. I don't want to come out too negative because at the end I'm probably going to give this like 4 or 5 stars because it's a really great movie and I genuinely enjoyed it today. I watched it today, like literally just before we come in. I watched this movie, which is going to be weird when I forget some of the stuff that happens in it. But it's a really good film that just suffers from the fact that there's just this hour in the middle where you're like, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I don't care who Will Scarlet is. I don't care. Will Scarlet, you add nothing to this movie. This is a subplot we do not need. Goodbye.
Yeah. I like this movie, but it's a movie. It's 2.5 hours long, and it feels every second of its 2.5 hours.
Jesus Christ, it feels every single second that it is. Sarah, what movie are we doing?
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, starring Kevin Costner as Robin of Locksley. Does he even try to do an accent? No, he does not.
He sounds exactly like he does in every movie where he plays Kevin Costner. Wait, should we introduce the podcast and say why you decided to do this podcast, Sarah? Because that was always my favourite.
Sure.
Sarah, why did you decide to do this podcast?
I decided to do this podcast because I have often found that my students' perceptions of the medieval world come from films, like perhaps this one. And I got that very much confirmed in the past year when I actually taught a medieval film course, and all of my students were very surprised that all the movies were wrong.
I can't believe that they were surprised. I mean, what movies did you watch with them this year?
Braveheart.
As we agreed, almost 100% historically accurate.
Almost 100% completely wrong. Kingdom of Heaven.
Wait, what's one thing that Braveheart got wrong, sir?
Well, I mean, that jus prime noctis was not a thing, and if it were a thing, it would have been called jus prime noctis and not primo nocta, as it is in this movie.
Listen, it was a primo nocta for that lord.
Oh, God.
And it was obviously a real thing. And then you watched, I nearly said Game of Thrones. Then you watched Kingdom of Heaven, obviously your favourite movie of all time.
Exactly. We watched El Cid, where I audibly groaned when watching it alone every time they said the word Spain, which is a lot.
I also think that maybe El Cid would give this movie a run for its money in the movies that are at least an hour too long. Like El Cid, it's good movie, historically important.
It does not need to be 3 hours. Also, I hate it, but
well, yeah, I know. I listened to your
episode.
To 3 hours. The whole time I was there going, do I also hate this movie? Because I might. It's been a long time since I watched it. I was like going, as you were describing it, I was thinking, maybe I hate El Cid.
The real goal of this podcast is to make everybody hate all movies set in the Middle Ages.
That sounds like the perfect thing. And this one, as we know, has Kevin Costner in it. The most British of actors to play Robin of Locksley.
Yep. And Morgan Freeman as his friend Azim Eddin Bashir al-Bakir.
You pronounce that way better than I ever could, because I'm looking at it written down here. And first of all, I've seen the movie maybe 50 times. That's not an exaggeration. There's a good chance I've seen this movie like 50 times. And I have always thought his name was Nazim. And now I say that's Azim Eddin Bashir al-Bakir. And as I'm saying that the entire time, they're going, I'm putting a lot of emphasis on the ear sounds to make it sound like I'm pronouncing it properly, but I just can't.
I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I pronounced it better than Kevin Costner.
Of course you did, because Kevin Costner basically just gives up pronouncing it after the first time he says it, because he was like, Nazim, Akzim! Okay, good job, Kevin.
Hey, Azim!
Azim, yeah.
That's Kevin Costner in the movie. We have Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio as Marian, a person who I have seen in nothing.
And I've seen her in The Abyss, and I'm sure I've seen her in other stuff. She's a very, very pretty lady, a very distinctive look, and she's got curly hair and stuff, and I think she could pass for Irish. Sarah thinks she could pass for Jewish, which is not something I don't think I've ever said for an Irish person before, that I don't think is like...
She's like the one crossover.
We could pass for Jews. I don't think we could. Most of the time, maybe I could. I've got a neck beard at the minute, so kind of.
Yeah, maybe if you grow out the beard, get some payas.
I reckon I could. Hold on a second. Got a little bit of baldness going on there, and I can just let the hair grow out a little bit over the edges of my ears.
Just work on that. You're almost getting it. You almost got like an Orthodox rabbi look going.
Then we got Christian Slater, Sarah. Sarah, we can just talk about him now because I'll be angry about the entire subplot involving him as we go along later on. How do you feel about Christian Slater? Like when you were watching him today, were you like, well, hello?
No, I hate Christian Slater. Every time I see Christian Slater, I hate Christian Slater more.
But do you not think?
And I don't think he's like. I don't even know why.
Is he not like super handsome to you?
No.
Sarah, you must be the woman who doesn't find Christian Slater adorable.
Heather's ruins him for me.
Christian Slater.
Really? I don't find him attractive at all. I just find him so unpleasant that, like, maybe I could see why somebody found him attractive, but I just find him always so unpleasant that it completely ruins the effect. Yeah.
What about in, like, Interview with the Vampire?
I have not seen Interview with the Vampire in 10 years and did not remember he was in it. So I'll get back to you.
We should talk about Interview with the Vampire.
We should.
Anyway, Christian Slater's in it. He's playing Will Scarlet. It's a character that
I hate him.
Is obviously one of Robin's merry men. Bet you didn't know he was Robin's legitimate brother, but apparently he is, because that's a plot point we need to have.
Yeah, and a subplot that adds 25 minutes to the movie that is completely unnecessary.
Completely unnecessary, because it doesn't put them in any more danger than it does, because he goes from supporting Robin to betraying Robin to being back on Robin's side. You're like, thanks.
Yeah, he could do all that without being his illegitimate half-brother.
He could also not do that. Like, I mean, if you're going to...
Yeah, I mean, if he wasn't in the movie, I actually don't think it would matter.
Honestly, I don't think it would. I think it's like, literally, you're not in the movie, fair enough, we're done.
The person we do need in this movie is Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham, who gives a fantastic performance in a completely different movie.
Yeah, it's a good job that Alan Rickman was the Sheriff of Nottingham and there's a giant forest there, because he chews so much of the scenery in this movie that he might as well be fucking building a dam like a beaver, because this guy is gnawing on anything that gets in a scene with him. It is, like, don't get me wrong, it's one of those great performances and I don't want to laugh it off and I don't want to sound like I'm coming down on him, especially since, you know, God bless him and he's passed on. But he is snaping it up in a movie where nobody else is snaping it up.
Right, it's that he's great, but it seems like he was told to do something completely different by the director than what everyone else was told to be doing. Like, he just doesn't think he's in the same movie as these people.
As you said earlier, sometimes it's hard to remember that he's in this version of the movie and not Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he seems like he's a comedic villain. Yeah,
because of the way it's played. And it's like, cancel Christmas. Like, right, okay, guys. I can't do an Alan Rickman impression unless it's Potter.
Someone will think you're up to something.
Yes, exactly. Or like he's cheating on Emma Thompson in, you know, Love Actually.
Right.
Bastard.
Okay. As Hans Gruber pretending to be an American for 5 seconds in Die Hard, he does in a better American accent Then Kevin Costner does a British accent.
He's like,
because he's not trying.
And he's
but
holding
still.
the gun. And he's like, oh, what am I do?
Oh God, you're one of them.
Fuck yeah. Alan Rickman, God bless him.
Alan Rickman is one of our true treasures.
What a great actor. Just in this movie, like, oh my God. I mean, he literally could be. Is it Richard Lester plays him in Men in Tights?
I don't remember.
It's somebody like that. And if you were to replace him, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Right.
Like,
but he's good in his way. It's just a weird performance choice.
Yeah, he's got a witch.
Yeah, I don't understand where the witch comes from.
He has a witch. And it's because in Men in Tights, he's got a hag. Because Men in Tights is obviously taking the piss out of this.
Right.
It's just, like, hence the, I've got a British accent. Right? It's just... Anyway, he's good. Just, it's a weird performance. And then Brian Blessed as Lord Loxley, that's Kevin Costner's dad, because Kevin Costner clearly can't do anything British related, so they had to get the most British man of all time, Brian Blessed, to play his father.
I do love that the more I think about it, the less believable I find it that Brian Blessed could ever possibly be Kevin Costner's father.
He's boss nass.
He's Augustus.
I don't care if he's Augustus. He's boss nass, Sarah. He's going along going... Ciao, ciao. You're bad.
And he's also a scenery chewer often, but he doesn't like have the opportunity really in this.
Well, he just gets that bit where he gets to ride out and he's like, is it for justice and King Richard?
Yeah, but he has like 5 minutes of this movie.
Mm-hmm. Then
we've also got Michael Wincott as Guy of Gizborne.
Love him. Absolutely love him. Nothing bad to say about him.
And he's a classic bad guy.
He's just so good at everything he does. Like, I can see this guy as a bad guy in this movie. He's obviously Rochefort in Three Musketeers. He's the bad guy in The Crow.
Right.
It's like he's in Alien Resurrection. I was mentioning this to Sarah earlier, and he's playing like a smuggler.
Right.
And I can picture this guy as a space smuggler, because when he opens his mouth, he's like, "I'm a spice smuggler." Okay. You've been smoking a lot there? Yeah, smoke a lot, yeah. It's like, he's just, I can't do I can't do any voices, but let's be honest. Like guys, you've been listening to this podcast enough, right? I cannot do any voices. But Michael Wincott just has this awesome voice. And the fact that he gets killed in the way he does in this movie, I think is a detriment to the movie, because at least for the first hour and a half, the Duke has somebody to, at least fire the stuff off against. And then... Right,
they play off each other really well.
He's killed him, because, spoiler alert, it is Alan Rickman who stabs him. Then the last hour, it's just
fucking stabs him.
Nothing. Like, there's no secondary villain for Robin to defeat. Like, and that's the whole point of having a guy with Gizborne, is to be there. It's the same reason that Rochefort exists in the Three Musketeers, is you have to beat him before you get the Richelieu.
And then that's sort of what they do. Like, they've got like the witch as like a secondary villain that's somebody else to fight, and same with the bishop that we got our priest fight. But like it would have been nice to have that kind of like secondary boss kind of character.
Yeah,
for longer.
It's just weird that they chose. Like, I get why they do it. Let's make the sheriff extra evil. He just killed his own cousin. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's cousins back in the medieval times. I mean, you might as well be a peasant. Chances of getting stabbed are very high.
Did we not believe in cousins? Did we not believe in cousins back in the Middle Ages?
They just get killed, sir. This is my cuz. Stab him.
I mean, family members in general in medieval movies fare poorly. Like, Robin's dad. It's like, oh, wait, there's Robin's dad. How long is it going to take for him to die? 3 seconds? Called it.
Well, we should talk about this when we go through our enumeratio.
Everyone's missed that.
I have actually had my school choir record this. This is the funny thing about this, right? Is I've got the kids together. I got them in a room. And it's like, all right, kids, you're going to say a couple of words now, and you're just going to sing them as a group. Like there's like 40 kids, and they're a good choir, and they sang them for me, and I recorded them, and I have no idea where I put them. They're somewhere on a memory stick, recorded in Numeratio, sung properly by kids who know how to sing. And yet,
that would be lovely.
I also just forget to do it every single time. I'm like going, where did I put it? And the weird thing about it is, I can tell you exactly what the memory stick looks like, because as a teacher, right, I go through a crap ton of memory sticks. Like, Sarah, right. You know, like you're probably doing the exact same thing. And this is back in the days before I was using Google Drive all the time. But it's on the memory stick that says climate change ambassador on it, because, you know, in my spare time I care about the environment, and I was a climate change ambassador. And I'm not sure where I put that memory stick. And I'm looking around my kitchen now. Like, so Sarah is watching me as I'm looking at the presses in my kitchen, because that is literally where I could have put it. It could be up there with the rice for all I know.
Could be anywhere. Maybe it's just in the rice.
There's a good chance it's right like beside that bottle of whiskey over there. Maybe I should go drink the bottle to see what's behind it. Anyway.
After this week, we all need more to drink.
Enumeratio, Sarah. Let's start the recap on this.
We're in Jerusalem in 1194, where Robin of Locksley is in prison after having gone on the Third Crusade with Richard the Lionheart. Why did I write Richard of Lionheart? What am I doing in my notes? He's been there for 5 years, and he's got this friend, Peter, and he's sort of trying to say, he basically, like, Peter's hand is going to get cut off, and he says, no, you can cut my hand off instead, and then he fights back, and they have a very daring escape attempt.
It is a very, very daring escape attempt. Where he volunteers to get his hand cut off, and then Azim, played by Morgan Freeman, helps him, and then they stop to eat some melons.
That's where the melons are.
Yeah, at the very beginning. They stop to break open a couple of...
Because you texted me and you were like, a melon break, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I watched this like 2 whole days ago. They
find a bunch of melons, and there's just this hilarious scene to me of Robin running off holding like 3 melons.
And then while they're eating melons, I guess Peter dies.
Yeah, it's just after Peter dies and he gives him the ring. Okay. And then they stop for a melon break. And it's the point where Azim tells him, you saved my life, now my life belongs to you. I owe you a life debt. That's the scene with the melons. They're holding melons and eating melons at that point there. What a random choice. Like, of all the things they have, and like they're digging into the flesh of the melon with their fingers. And you're like,
they've been in prison for like 5 years. When do you think they last got to eat a melon?
Sarah, it's still not the first thing that's going to pop into my head. Yeah, I better make sure I get my fruit requirements.
They probably have scurvy.
It's a good chance to do have scurvy. Bunch of bloody sailors.
So Azim owes him this life debt, and Peter is dead, and Peter gives him a ring that he tells him to go and give to his sister Marian when they get back to England. We then go to England briefly, where we see Robin's father, who is writing to say he's, worried about his kid because he's been gone for like 5 years, and then gets lured into a trap where I guess Nottingham is running like the KKK?
It's so...
Question mark?
It's so random. Like,
why are they in white hoods?
Of all the things, we're in pristine white cloaks. Do they come back at any stage in the rest of the movie? You bet your ass they don't.
But, it's fine. That's trendy these days, because we just had a white supremacist coup in the United States yesterday, so... Or attempted white supremacist coup.
But this was the day, we're recording this the day after the attempted supremacist coup. Sorry guys. We're recording this the day after the first attempted white supremacist coup. Just the first one.
Right. By the time their episode comes out, there might have been another one.
Yeah. You know the will.
America.
You know the will, Sarah. Your country is doing fine. So then we cut to, he gets killed. Brian Blessed is playing Robin's dad, and he goes out and he's like, oh, I'm never going to agree with you, Duke of Nottingham. Also, thank you for showing me your... Why do they show up with masks, Sarah?
I don't know why they're wearing white robes and masks. Literally, I don't know what is behind this choice.
Literally, the first thing he does is he puts his hand up and takes off his mask to reveal it's the Duke.
Yeah.
Oh, the sheriff, sorry. What? Why all the secrecy?
I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, except to make them look like the KKK, and I don't understand what the rationale behind that choice is.
Because
it's so weird.
Because there's a black guy in this movie, Sarah.
Yeah, there's some weird race stuff that we're going to talk about. So 4 months later, Robin and Azim arrive in England, and Robin, bless his heart, is like, we'll be celebrating with my father by nightfall, and it's like, oh honey, no.
Yeah. It's a weird one. Also, the bit where they get off the boat, and then Robin is talking to Azim, and does Robin orchestrate the attack on Azim? Because they're having this conversation and Robin's like, you don't really owe me a life debt. It's all bullshit. Don't worry about it. And then the French guy attacks him. And we know he's French because Azim throws a little shade his way about stinking of garlic. Right? But he attacks him and Azim knocks him over. And then the conversation goes back to, nobody is going to decide my fate but me, Robin of Locksley. Right? And I was there thinking, did Robin plan that? And it was like, you attack him and then it looks like you're saving my life, Azim, so you get to go your own way. Maybe don't do that when you land in England, Robin.
Yeah, maybe do that 4 months ago before you leave.
Like, I need to get rid of this life debt that this guy's got to me. Let's wait until we're in a country where he would probably, based on the movie, be the only black guy in the country. And then I'll set you free from your life debt.
Right, it's like, well, you saved my life. I'm not even going to give you dinner now.
He probably came home via Morocco. Like, let him away there from his life debt.
It's weird, yeah. But, so I wasn't quite sure what was going on with that. But maybe that was a kind of orchestrated effort. And then also, Robin just aggressively bullies him into giving the details of how he ended up in prison, which I guess he didn't do 4 months ago because, I don't know. And, but it turns out that he was in prison for having had an affair with a married woman whose name is Yasmina, and this never matters again.
It doesn't matter at all. Basically, he had an affair because he's a painted old devil, in the words of Robin of Locksley, our hero. Because, he's a black man, so therefore he's painted. And I said...
Yeah, they keep saying that, and it is a whole lot.
It is weird. So, Robin did this, but I just want to point out that this is also kind of the starting plot to the much vaunted superior film, The 13th Warrior, where Eben is sent away because of his inability to keep his dick out of a married woman. Let's just say her name was also Jasmina.
I mean, because why is this thing that they just introduce out of nowhere for no reason except to be like, women, they're sex objects that like get men in trouble. Oh well, women suck, right?
Yeah, it's true, Sarah. Like, I mean, I do have this beard on my neck, so I can't disagree with you.
So you do hate women now?
Not all women. Hashtag not all women. No.
Hashtag yes, all men.
Yeah, all men, yeah. Fuck those cunts. So they're walking along this amazing wall, which appears to just constantly go up and down hills. I don't know where it is, but I want to go visit because it looks gorgeous, right? It's meant to be down near the White Cliffs of Dover, but it looks like a genuinely awesome set. And they come across this kid who's getting chased by some Irish wolfhounds, which, by the way, are lovely dogs, and they wouldn't be chasing no kid. Maybe to give him a good lick.
There is, like, slander in this movie at how viciously these Irish wolfhounds are presented. Irish wolfhounds are the sweetest dogs in the world, especially with children. There are photos of me with my Irish wolfhound growing up where she is, like, 8 times my size, and she would never have hurt a fly, and this movie is...
Unless you're a wolf. In which case, you're fucked.
Yeah, but he's not a wolf. He's a nice little boy. And they would give him a big lick, a bunch of big licks. Well, maybe they'd knock him over a little bit.
Strangely enough, his nickname is Wolf.
That's true. His nickname is Wolf. Or which is also a choice of like, okay, that's a weird like Anglo, like early like Old English name that we're like putting in the 12th
That's right, Wolf. The Wolfhounds are being led by Guy de Gizborne, played by Michael Wincott, and a bunch of his soldiers. And then Robin shows up and he's like, oh, this is actually my land, bitches. You can't go hunting this boy. I say he's allowed to eat the deer, blah, 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 blah. Then Guy de Gizborne's like, oh, good job you're home, Robin. And then tells his men to attack them. At which point Robin kills 4 of them, I think, gets Guy on the ground, puts a sword up to his throat, and then chooses not to kill him.
Yeah, he's like, go tell the sheriff of Nottingham who sent you, or whatever.
But just there's literally no reason for it. Like, I get it. Don't show, I mean, he's showing mercy. He shoots a guy in the face.
Right, he kills another 4 people.
Yeah, like, he's literally just after murdering these dudes. It's not like he's showing any respect. It's just because this one happens to be Guy de Gizborne. You know, the guy who's ordering them to kill him. But it's okay to kill the guys who were ordered to kill you, but not the guy who ordered it, apparently. So, I don't know. At which point he throws some shade at Azim's way for, you know, at one of those points in the movies where we have to remember this guy's Muslim because he had to get down to pray at the certain points during the day. He had to find which way Mecca was.
Right. And he's like, how the fuck do you know which way is east? There's no goddamn sun here, which is a fair complaint.
That is a fair complaint. But then Robin knows because he knows this place like the back of his hand.
Yes, and so he's praying, and so he doesn't get to fulfill his life debt because he's in the middle of that. Guy goes back to the sheriff of Nottingham and complains that he met a hooded man, to which I'm like, wait, did he even have a hood on? He took it off pretty quick if he did. And also, isn't the important thing that it's like this guy who like owns the land? And isn't that what we should be talking about? I mean, I know it's because he's Robin Hood, but it's like, it just seems like such a like weird little like, everybody, it's Robin Hood.
But he has his name. He's like, we met a hooded man. He took down me and 6 of our men. His name is Robin of Locksley. And then the sheriff goes, Robin of Locksley? He's nothing but an untrained whelp.
Right, just say Robin of Locksley's back, and that's the end of the conversation. Like, why is there all this weird lead up? Again, this movie could be 1 hour shorter.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's just so we can get more of the sheriff of Nottingham. I think what they were lining up was that the sheriff is meant to be, I think he's meant to be a hard ass. Like honestly, because the way he responds of, he's an untrained whelp, he'll pose no problems, right? As if he's like a hard ass, like a badass dude, right? And then later on there's a bit where he's holding a sword, and he's like Spanish steel, stronger than our native weapons or whatever. And he's like swinging it around, like he's doing a bit of little hand movements with his swords and stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, so ideally that's what they're lining up here, is he's a dangerous man, right? So he could be a badass. It's just, and that's where I think the problem with the performance comes in, is that it's played so arch and so over the top that I don't see him beating Robin of Locksley in a fight.
And that's kind of happening here, right? Is that he is actually, like, he's pretty good in a fight. Like, he comes close to winning in the end, but he also has this, like, weird, like, comedic vibe. Yeah, it's very much like we can't decide if we want him to be genuinely badass or, like, a comedy villain. So Robin arrives at his father's castle, where he finds that it is in ruins, and also that his father's rotting corpse is hanging from a tower, which is a whole lot after 4 months.
See, that's another thing I was thinking. Like, that it's meant to have been 4 months. The castle looks like it's been in ruin for 200 years, because it probably has been in ruin for 200 years. And the dad is rotted away. And you think, was it not contemporary that when Robin was breaking out that was happening? And if it did mean to have happened 4 or 5 years before, show that it happened at the very beginning of the crusade. So as soon as Robin was out of the picture, this happened, and not... Yeah, no,
the implication is definitely that it happened, that also happened 4 months ago.
So there's no way the thing should have been destroyed. It's like when we watched the other Robin Hood, which has a similar story, the Robin Hood story should have this, is he comes back and his castle is in disrepair, but it was burned. It was razed to the ground. That's right. That's the point. And there's only a few things left which didn't get damaged in the fire or whatever. Like, it's weird for me to be saying that it makes more sense in that other movie, which is a steaming pile of crap.
Right. What was that? Here they just picked some ruins to film it in.
Yes, that's exactly
which, it. But they do find his father's blind servant, Duncan, who I guess has just been, like, hanging out there in this ruined castle for 4 months. And he tells them what happens, and Robin swears a blood oath to avenge his father. Okay, and so he puts on this medallion. Is that his father's medallion? What is the deal with the medallion?
I think it's his father's medallion. It's the father's.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's the symbol of Loxley.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's just a cross, so that doesn't actually make sense,
Yeah.
but whatever. It's his father's medallion. So Nottingham's got a witch, apparently, who... Okay, she's got this egg, and she cracks the egg onto a plate, and the egg has, like, this weird, like, congealed blood that comes out of it, and then she, like, throws some runestones on it and predicts their death.
And then she sees one, which is a picture of a cross with an X underneath it, or like a skull and crossbones with an X. And you're like, oh, I wonder what that is. And she freaks out. She's like, ah, the painted man.
Yes. The painted man is phrasing that will keep coming up.
Where does she get the painted man from the rest of the runes?
That's a very good question, but I'm not an expert in the reading of runes and that particular art, so I don't know. But
this is sometimes we're just doing this podcast and you let me down. I'm just saying,
So they go to Marian's, and Robin starts by he's like, "We'll find food and shelter there." To which I'm just definitely like, "Yeah, I mean, you're 0 for 1 on this, buddy. Like, why would anybody trust you and your opinions about this at this point?" So they're not super happy to see him there.
Yeah, I hate this scene.
I also hate this scene. Okay, so they let him in, but only very begrudgingly, and he has to leave his weapons outside, and Azim and Duncan have to stay outside. I do like Azim's one line where he goes, "The hospitality in this country is as warm as the weather," and then pauses, and then is like, "It's a joke." I did like that. I didn't love how then Duncan is like a big old racist who like bitches that like Moors and Saracens, as he puts it, are the ones really at fault for the crusade. Obviously, you know, never minding the fact that you could have like left them the fuck alone in the first place. And then he's like, "Huh, what kind of name is Azim? Irish? Cornish?"
Yeah, that's it. You've had Mabel on a few times. I mean, she sounds like somebody who could be named Azim.
You also seem like somebody who could be named Azim. It's a good Irish name,
It's my middle name. Oliver Azim Brady. Mm-hmm. People don't realize this. It's very common over here, the name Azim.
And then he says, "Moorish," and he goes,
yeah, poor old Duncan. I mean, if only we could talk about how he's blind some more.
Oh, we will. We will. So, initially we see this person who, I'll just, give it away, turns out to be Marian's servant, Sarah. And she's the one who initially, pops up and she says, "I'm Marian." And Robin says something like, "The years have been kind to you," while giving her this look that's like, "Clearly you're not as hot as I thought you were going to be." And the whole thing is essentially, it feels like a joke about the fact that this woman is not as conventionally attractive as one would expect Marian to be watching this movie.
Hey, this girl is chunky. She can't be made Marian. Oh, somebody attacks Robin from behind. Robin, who has no weapon, defeats this person because it's meant... I'm assuming it's meant to be like a girl power. Women are doing it for themselves, guys. She's keeping things up. But Robin literally beats her with no weapon when she has a sword on him.
Right.
And a dagger on him. And the only reason she gets to kick him in the nuts is because Azim breaks through the door. Which, by the way, it's a pretty shit door if one old man and one Moor managed to just knock it in with a couple of runs.
Knock it all the way. Yeah, it's like, okay. Yeah, and it's very much this, like, girl power, like, she can fight, but, like, actually, she's not very good at it. And also, in all of the future scenes where her being able to fight would be useful, we will never see the fact that she can fight again. So, like, it's just this weird, like, look at us, we're going to pretend that the women have agency for, like, 30 seconds of this character existing, and then we will never speak of it again as she becomes a damsel in distress.
Yeah, that's literally what happens. This movie, and this is where the extra length comes in, is introduce Marian. I get it. It's Robin Hood. You want to put Marian in the thing. That's fine. That's grand. It makes sense. At least in the Kate Blanchett version of it, she's not just a milksop. Like, and I don't mean that it sounds like I'm being terrible, but like her entire character here is to be carted off and be the damsel. And it doesn't need to be here. And because of this, because of the courting scenes we see later on, we also end up with, like, what is there, 25 extra minutes in the movie because we have to see her seeing Robin interact with kids. We have to see her seeing Robin with his gold, but I'm giving it back to the poor. Like, we get it.
Right.
Like, we don't need to know this, that they fall in love. There are so many other movies where the handsome hero and the maiden fall in love with 2 looks and 1 conversation. Like, I don't need this entire long extra scene put into the middle of the movie showing them not really be warm and cozy with each other. Like, I don't think there's any sexual tension between them at any point in the movie.
Oh, I mean, it's also like that the actors have 0 chemistry, but it's this weird thing too that, like, there's all of these, like, falling in love scenes, and they add to her screen time, which, you know, fine, but they don't actually add anything to anything that we know about her character. It's just essentially, like, using her then as a reflection for, like, no, look how good Robin is, that he can, like, win over a lady, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, I hate it.
It's mad to me that any of that's, like, it just doesn't seem to work. And as you said, as you've written in the notes here, there's a bit where she's like, you can't replace my brother. That's not what Robin's angling for here.
Not the goal, buddy. Also, okay, I have to talk about Marian's scarf, because Marian is wearing what looks absolutely like, okay, so you know how on, like, street corners in European cities, they have those, like, pashmina scarves, right? And they've got, like, 75 of them, and they're in all different colors, and they all cost, like, €5 or £5. She is wearing one of those scarves. And no shade, I have many of those scarves, but they don't really seem quite right in the 12th century with a medieval dress.
Yeah, it is a really nice pashmina she's wearing, but yeah, it does look like...
Yeah, it's a great scarf.
It does look like something that shouldn't be existing on an English noblewoman in, 1191 or wherever it's meant to be set.
Right. She indicates that she's not like other girls because she doesn't like life at court. And she doesn't want to do that. And also, she talks about how Robin, as a child, was a spoiled bully who used to burn her hair, which I feel like is creepy and sadistic as fuck, and, like, did not need to be there as a detail that makes me like him 5,000 times less.
Listen, Sarah, sometimes you just need to break a girl down, and sometimes you need
to... By setting fire to her hair.
Set fire to her hair, make nasty comments about her appearance. Like...
that's what boys do to show the girls that they like them in a trope, which is terrible.
Milady. Like, it's how it's going to work. Is my hat turning into a MAGA hat? By the way?
It's going a little fedora shaped.
No, I'm fitting in.
Yeah, so it's just a weird relationship, and they add in all of these details which don't improve it, and also they have no chemistry.
Zero chemistry. And I just realized something here, right? So I'm looking at the recording time.
Yes.
So for those of you who are listening, it's probably around about 42 minutes into the podcast, right? Which means we've been talking about 42 minutes. We're just about to come up to maybe the 20-minute mark of the movie, right? Now, obviously myself and Sarah like to talk crap, and we were talking about the cast and all this stuff beforehand, right? But the beginning of the movie is interesting. This stuff is interesting, right? Which is why this first opening 20 minutes of the movie and the last 35 minutes to 40 minutes of the movie, interesting, enjoyable. I like talking about that stuff. There's an hour and 20 minutes in the middle, starting from around about the next scene. So the next scene is meeting Little John, right? Pretty much from then on to around about the time where Guy of Gizborne gets killed. Almost everything is waffle. Actually, wait, it's even beyond Guy of Gizborne getting killed. It's around about the point where Marian gets kidnapped. It's
like when they come back and do the rest. Right, yeah.
When Will Scarlet comes back. That's the end. Like,
when they do the big rescue.
Yes. That could all have been done in a montage of robbing from the rich, giving to the poor.
Yeah.
But
no, instead, it's an hour and a half that could have been 15 minutes.
That's my main problem with the movie, because this is a movie I genuinely enjoy. I would almost go and say it's one of my favourite movies. If I'm into it, like if I want to sit down and throw on a comfort movie, I will sit down and throw on this movie. But my God, there is so much after the introduction of Little John to the end, which is just why?
Yeah.
But anyway,
again, this does not need to be a 2.5-hour movie. So Azim sees the approach of the sheriff's men through a telescope, as I will discuss later, which Robin finds incredibly confusing. So he's like looking through the telescope, but he like takes out his sword and like almost like falls off the fucking battlements, like trying to stab a person who's like, I don't know, 30 feet away or whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it is so random. He's like, I've never seen one of these before. Okay, we get it, but you also don't think that the people have suddenly appeared in front of you. Like,
right, yeah. It's like you know that you're on a tower and that they're on the ground. Like, you know they're not in the sky, at least. Like, they're high up on a tower.
Yeah, like, there's weird stuff like that. But, I mean, it's the equivalent of, like, I take microscopes around. So I teach in secondary school. So I teach usually the senior kids. So I'm teaching physics and chemistry. I'm not teaching baby science a lot. But Irish schools my school finishes like a month before the primary schools do. So what I like to do is go around to visit primary schools and just do some science with the kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, as in, here's a science teacher coming in doing some science stuff. So I bring a microscope. I don't show a microscope to 6-year-old kids who then suddenly start reaching in to try and touch the slide. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, I'm touching it. I can see the thing. It's like, they're not stupid.
And it's just this very annoying, like, medieval people are dumb. It's like, yeah, we get it. So, yeah, they're kind of... So at that point, they're like, oh, I guess we should, like, deal with this. Robin confesses that they're looking for him because he killed some of the sheriff's men, to which Marian responds with the understatement of the goddamn century of, oh, dear. But before they run away, is it just me, or did Robin kind of, like, grab her ass a bit?
I mean,
and she's like...
He's already been talking to her for, like, 10 minutes, Sarah. He needs to get what he earned. She owed him.
But I was like, I could swear it. Did I see that, or did I make that? Like, I could swear that happened, but I didn't want to rewind because I was like, there's still like 95 minutes of this movie.
He does definitely do like a pulling motion of her towards him.
Yeah, it's a little like, oh, okay, you don't need to do that. You can do that without. You can say you want to protect her without touching her. So they do get away. They take some horses. Nottingham shows up.
Yeah, she says to Gizborne, they stole the horses, and he's like, lucky he didn't steal your virtue as well. That's my Michael Wincott impression. Because, you know, exactly, that's what all men think about all the time.
Hashtag yes, all men. Mm-hmm. Robin and company go into Sherwood Forest to hide, and they meet up with the whole Sherwood Forest crew, including Christian Slater, who sucks. Wolf is there, and I think that Wolf is also kind of the worst, because Robin's there, and he at no point is he like, oh yeah, this dude saved my life. Maybe you should like not be a giant asshole to him.
Yeah, he's like, oh, this guy's really careful, Dad. This guy's good at fighting. He beat 12 men. You're like, yeah, but that's great. So you're bigging up the story, but also maybe say this is the one who saved my life earlier.
Right. So that, you know, maybe then they'd like feel, I don't know, grateful and like this anyway. But you know, you have to have the whole fight scene between him and Little John because toxic masculinity. You can't be friends until you've beat each other up and kicked each other in the nuts.
Sarah, it is 100% true. I can't be bros with a dude until we've had a face smashing incident, and then once we've done that, we're bros.
Yeah, just have to kick each other in the nuts at least one time.
100%.
So now everybody's friends, with the exception that everybody's still real racist, so they're passing around mead, and they won't give any to Azim. And then Robin's like, dude, the fuck? And then Azim's like, I won't drink it anyway, because Allah says no. And Robin like kind of like rolls his eyes, which I'm like, it's his religion, leave him the fuck alone.
Yeah. Also it's mead, which as we know... It's honey. Sorry, that's just a 13th Warrior reference.
Yeah, so you know from the 13th Warrior, mead doesn't count, but I did say that was kind of bullshit in the 13th Warrior. As much as enjoyable as that movie is, the like mead loophole is not a thing.
It would be sweet if it was,
My
except that
categories.
mead is also ass. Nobody.
Yeah, mead is disgusting. That would be
disgusting.
a terrible loophole. Nobody wants that. Robin goes to church and he flirts with Marian, and she tells him to take a bath because he smells. Robin confronts the bishop, ends up fighting with the sheriff for a bit. And this is where we do get Alan Rickman's best line, which is that he yells, "I'm going to cut your heart out with a spoon," which describes approximately my feelings today about Ted Cruz.
Yeah, and then Wincott, Guy Gizborne asks him why a spoon. He's like, "Because it's dull, you twit. It'll hurt more. Weasley." I can't even do a Snape impression now, but yeah, it's good. It's just...
It's dull, you twit. It'll hurt more.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good version of it. But that's the point, is
Thank
he's having like a statue made at this point. Like a bust of himself made that later somebody puts in like the cut that Robin puts on his face. You're like, this is all... It's two different movies. The guy can't be scary and talk about cutting your heart out with a spoon while also being vainglorious and getting his face turned into like statues and stuff like.
And also at the same time, Robin takes everything so seriously. Like, Kevin Costner is playing this role extremely straight. Right? And like, there's nothing comedic about...
And Alan Rickman is the bad guy in an action comedy. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, Kevin Costner thinks he's, like, still in fucking Dances with Wolves, like, except, you know, well, I guess actually he is still a white savior, so.
That's true.
I guess that's just Kevin Costner.
Sarah's cat is attacking her right now.
She's difficult this week.
She's old. You leave her alone.
Yeah, she's 18 years old. Older than some of my students. Yeah? Are you older than my students? Good kitty. The sheriff, like, wrecks a whole village because he thinks that they're helping Robin Hood. So everybody goes to the woods, and Robin gives a nice, inspiring speech and talks them into, like, all fighting with him and banding together. We've got this whole montage of, like, everybody's training and everybody's making weapons. Where are they getting the tools and raw materials from which to make swords?
Oh, they're stealing them.
In the woods.
So they're stealing them when they steal from the rich and give to the poor.
Are the rich carrying an entire set of blacksmith's tools? Are the rich carrying a forge?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Also, how easily he turns people around. They all want to kill him. They're all mad at him. Will Scarlet takes out a knife to attack him from behind. Robin shoots him in the hand, and then people are like, "Oh, well, you shot Will Scarlet in the hand."
Yeah, I mean, and that sort of works because I feel like part of it is that Will Scarlet loses goodwill by having attacked from behind.
Yeah, but also the fact that nobody likes Will Scarlet in the first place. So.
Oh yeah, he sucks. So Nottingham is, of course, very upset. He's raising the bounty up to 1,000 gold, and then decides that the way to do this and the way to actually get rid of Robin is to oppress the people more, and with the goal that they'll then blame him for it, which doesn't make any sense. And this is another scene where it's so comedic, and so he's like, get rid of all the alms for the lepers and the orphans, cancel the merciful beheadings, and call off Christmas. And it's like, it's a funny line and it's well delivered, but it's not in the same movie as any other scene in this movie.
It's so randomly rushed for a movie which doesn't rush anything else. They rush to him being the leader of the Merry Men, basically. And
yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
I get
too.
You. Let's make sense. But then they're stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. Eventually they rob Friar Tuck and Guy de Gisborne, who are travelling together for some undisclosed reason. And they steal, which apparently looks like a lot of money to me. And then they realise, well, this money must be going towards something. So it turns out that they're building an army to kill Richard the Lionheart when he comes back from the Crusades.
Yes, they also, of course, steal a lot of beer and get Friar Tuck to join them.
Yes.
So
Friar Tuck, who
now.
in this one is as always, representing as a Franciscan monk, way before Franciscans existed, but also doesn't love bees. And I miss that.
It's sad. Where is his love of bees? But yeah, and it's, I think, like, the date... I think the date is such that I think, like, the Franciscan order maybe existed, but they're not in England, if I'm remembering correctly, of my exact dates. But it's certainly well too early for the Franciscans to be in England.
Yeah, but he needs to have the bees are my family. Like, we need that scene. That's how we know.
Instead, just the beer is his family. Like, that's actually what we have instead. Is Friar Tuck in this is just like a high-functioning alcoholic.
Yeah, I don't even think he's that high-functioning. He's just a bloated
like,
racist.
all he talks about... Yeah, like, all he talks about is how he wants to drink and how he hates Muslims.
Yeah.
Oh, no, okay, this actually does, the Franciscans also, yes, by the way, the Franciscans are, 1209, so, like, we are well too early in 1194 for this to be the Franciscans. Yeah. St. Francis is, like, 12 years old when this movie takes place.
Exactly. Now, this is the point where, to me, the movie falls apart, because this is where Guy gets killed by the sheriff. Because he comes back and he's like, oh, we got attacked and our stuff was taken from us. And the sheriff stabs him and goes, well, at least I didn't use a spoon. It's good steel. Because, he's talking...
Well, at least I didn't use a spoon. It's good steel.
Yeah, that's exactly the way he says it. But also he says it in, like, a really flamboyant way, too. He's like... he's one step away from twirling his mustache.
I didn't use a spoon. Yeah. He's twirling his goatee. So Marian and her maid Sarah are in the woods. They foil a robbery by Robin's band. They're taking to see him. She ogles him naked, and he basically shows off how cool he is for a while. And then she and Azim, like, deliver Little John's wife's baby for some reason.
It's because we need to show that Azim isn't bad. Like, everyone thinks Muslims are bad, but this guy... He can do that thing which all movies like to show, is that all people who are Muslims are also exceptional doctors.
Right, and it's like this, not that there weren't, like, people who are polymaths and who have a multiplicity of skills, but, like, this guy, there's no reason to think that he's, like, a scientist, like, and would know how to deliver a baby. But that is the only thing that you can be a real doctor if you've done, is to deliver a baby. So thank you, Ben Shapiro. I guess I'm not a real doctor.
Of course. Now, one of the other things that I think it's with this is, I always make jokes about Attack of the Clones, because it's a movie that people can make jokes about. And
it's terrible.
In Attack of the Clones, there's the well-trodden path of making jokes about the fact that Padme has no interest in boning down with him until he kills all of the Sand People. And he's like, I killed men, women, and children. Blah, 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 right? In this movie, Marian has little or no interest in Robin. Like, she's there. There's a little bit of flirtation that's going on. But it's not exactly, like, they're hot for each other. Until they have their private conversation up surrounded by gold, where he talks about how his dad fucked a peasant girl. And he never forgave him as a kid. And that was the last thing that he said to his dad, was angry words about how he was betraying his mother. And that's when the movie decides to cut to Marian's face. And it's definitely, that's the moment where she's like, I love this man. Like, that is the moment in the movie. It's the exact same as in Attack of the Clones, where they cut to Padme's face. He's like, I have so much concern for this man. His soul must be broken after that horrible thing he did. She's looking at him, it's like, oh, your dad fucked a peasant girl.
Well, it's because the bar for men's emotional vulnerability, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, is, like, on the goddamn floor. Like, the fact that he, like, referred to having once had a feeling is like,
That is pretty much what it is. You were once angry and sad because your dad slept with a peasant girl, and then you made him give her up for you. It's like, oh.
Also, it's like, it's after your mom has died. Like, don't be an asshole. Like, what a shitty kid that, like, your mom dies and your dad, like, has a girlfriend for 5 damn minutes, and you're like, I won't love you anymore if you don't dump your girlfriend. Like, fuck off.
Also, Dad, I'm so mad at you for having sex with this other woman. I hate you. I hate you so much that I'm going to go join the Crusades.
Yeah, that's basically how this thing is set up. And then it's also like, wait, so like why didn't he then also just take up with this peasant lady again after his son takes off to the fucking Crusades? Like, okay.
I don't know. It's just look. This entire thing doesn't need to be happening. Like there's a training the soldiers montage. One thing I do like about this is
that timing is weird because it does imply that right after that he went off to the Crusades.
Yeah,
but that doesn't make sense because when did Will Scarlet get conceived? Will Scarlet's like 3 years younger than he is.
Yeah, so he says that he was 12 when this argument happened, right? And then he still held the resentment. So I'm assuming Will Scarlet is meant to be 12 years younger than he is, right?
Okay.
Which I can see because Robin Hood is clearly in his mid-30s and Christian Slater is meant to be in his early 20s.
So, but then he spent another 18 years being a bitch about this thing that happened when he was 12. And then he's like, Dad, I'm going to go off to the Crusades. I don't love you. And it's like, you were a 30-year-old man. Stop being an asshole.
Yeah, that's the problem is it's like the timeline doesn't I was 12 and I would never forgive him for knocking up. Or he doesn't even know he knocked up because he doesn't know Will Scarlet's his brother at this point. Also, there's no reason for Will Scarlet to be his brother.
No, it's dumb. It's very, very dumb. But yes, we haven't even had that revealed yet. Also, I want to talk about Duncan, because at this point we start getting more of Duncan, but 90% of Duncan's dialogue is like lines about he is blind. So he's like talking to Marian and he's like, he's in love with you. I'm blind, but I still can see some stuff. And it's like, we get it. You're blind. Like, that doesn't have to be your only character trait, which in this movie it is, because God forbid, like, his only character trait is that he's blind. Azim's main character's trait is that he's, like, Muslim and black. And it's, like, all this, like, weird, like, we're going to pretend we have representation of, like, disabilities and of people of color, but they have no personalities beyond their disability or their race, ethnicity, religion.
Yeah, it's... The problem with the movie, as I see it, is... It's overly long, but the overly long parts are still focused on the three main characters. So there's no time spent to flesh out the other characters beyond. I'm not sure what the trope was called. Is it mystical black man? Is that the trope?
Right,
and that's what Morgan Freeman, who spent his entire life playing mystical black men in movies.
Right. And it's a shame because Morgan Freeman is an excellent actor who, because of the way Hollywood works, has been...
The blind guy who, I can tell that you love him and he loves you, Marian. How? How can you tell that, Duncan? You haven't seen the boy for 10 years and...
A, how can you tell that? And B... But A, okay, so A, how can you tell that? B... If he can, the fact that he's blind is irrelevant to that, and he doesn't need to comment on that in the line to, like, remind the people watching the movie that he's blind.
Yeah.
It's very ableist and weird. So Nottingham, on the suggestion of his witch that he has for some reason, hires a bunch of Celtic thugs to bolster his army. And Marian, meanwhile, basically like decides to send a letter to King Richard. She trusts the bishop, which is extremely dumb. The bishop obviously is not trustworthy, and basically his emissary goes with her maid Sarah. The emissary very quickly hits Sarah on the head and I guess leaves her for dead in the woods since we never see her again or hear of her or I guess apparently care.
Yeah, I assumed she was dead at that point. It's not done like she is dead, but she does not come back, so yeah.
No. And then I guess takes the letter to Nottingham, who's like, you've been betraying me and consorting with outlaws.
Yeah, but have you been betraying him? Like she's
right, she's writing to the king.
She's got nothing to him. It's not betraying
England.
You. She doesn't know who you are. She's loyal to King Richard the Lionheart.
Yeah, who's her cousin and also the king.
And also Sean Connery.
And also Sean Connery. Surprise, Sean Connery. They, meanwhile, they've had this big raid in Sherwood Forest, and they bring back a whole bunch of people to the castle at Nottingham, and Nottingham then tells Marian that he's going to kill all of them unless she marries him, in which case he will spare the women and children as a wedding gift, which she basically is put in the position that she has to agree to, where, like, 30 people are going to get killed.
Yeah, it's one of those random magic weddings as well, from the sounds of it, because he's in such a rush to get to the marriage, and the hag stroke witch has been telling him that this is a good idea. You're like, I don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
Like, the way they're pushing it through, and we're getting married, let's get up to get married. I think this doesn't solve all your problems. King Richard the Lionheart's not going to go back and go, hey, Marian, see you're married to the old Sheriff of Nottingham there. Good job.
Well, the implication that they make at some point is that his plan, and this is also one of these frustrating things, right, is that they always love in these movies to introduce these, like, weird plots to overthrow kings and put nobodies on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And so the, like, theoretical is like, oh no, like, he's going to use his marriage to Marian, who's the king's cousin, to overthrow Richard and become king. I'm watching this and I'm like, yeah, the king, that is like, the king has a brother who is the person who does in fact become king after him. The king also has, like, sisters, which would have a better claim than their, like, they and their husbands would have a better claim than, like, his cousin and her husband. And it's also like, who are you and how did you go from, like, I'm an asshole who enjoys, like, taking some money from people from, like, peasants in the woods to I'm going to overthrow the King of England?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
It's just, like, unnecessarily high stakes.
I'm going to be king now because Robin's away. I've got the Dukes backing me. It's like, don't give us a shit about the Dukes. They're not actually going to back you. Yeah. Also, the chances of that lasting are very, 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 very slim.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously he's marrying her to get into the royal side of the family or something, or to get into nobility. But I'm sure any of those Dukes that you have that apparently is supporting you marry one of their daughters.
Right. And it's also like, we'll get to it in a second, but, like, the wedding itself is also, like, the consent part actually matters and would never stand up in an ecclesiastical court, but, you know. So it's their wedding day. They're about to hang everybody. Will Scarlet, meanwhile, I guess basically said, I'll betray Robin. I hate him. And then he gets back and he's like, no, actually, I am your brother. And I believed in you even though I had every reason to hate you. So, like, do you suck or do you not suck? And then Robin's like, I guess we're friends.
Yeah, it's...
Sure.
Will Scarlet. Whatever.
We don't even need the character.
There's no reason for him to be a brother. There's no reason for him to do anything beyond just be one of the merry men. Like, that's all you need Will Scarlet for.
Yeah.
He's meant to be the funny one. Like, it's joking.
And it's this weird, like, they make him into this minor antagonist for no reason. It adds nothing, and it doesn't actually have stakes because he doesn't ultimately actually betray him. Because he comes around and isn't actually a traitor, and so there's no impact or stakes to the fact that, like, he doesn't like Robin Hood. And as I said, I feel like it actually would have been better if Will Scarlet had actually betrayed him. Right? Like, then at least there would be a point to the whole thing. But he never does. He really just, like, says he's going to and goes into the woods and then, like, doesn't. So, okay. So they're at the wedding day. Everybody's about to be hanged. They all show up to rescue people, including I will say, I do like that Little John's wife says that she's going to join them, especially because it's one of her kids, Wolf, who's one of the people who's going to be hanged. And Little John's like, you can't be put in danger. And she's like, bitch, I gave birth to 8 children. Don't talk to me about danger.
Yeah. And I find it funny because her name is Fanny, which in America means butt,
yes,
but over here means front butt.
It is also feels like a weird choice as a name for the 12th century, but that's
it is. That's what I'm saying. It's like what I can't imagine Fanny was a common name back in 1194 or whatever it said.
Right. So they're fighting. They, like, Little John, like, breaks the gallows with his brute strength so people don't die. Azim, like, basically says, like, I'm not even English and I'm fighting, so y'all should fight, and therefore gets them all to join in revolt. There's also a question here about at what point Azim learned English.
Yeah, he's always known English, sir.
He's never known English.
He's a mystical,
if he knew English, he learned...
mystical black man.
That's true. It's because he's magic that he knows English. We've got Nottingham drags Marian into the crypt with the bishop in order to rush the wedding. There's this weird thing where the witch is like, because of, like, I don't know, magic or something, you have to fuck, like, right now.
See, this is what I'm getting at. It's like the witch is the one who's
so
behind this wedding thing, and the witch is behind it.
Yeah.
Get hammering, which means it's obviously some sort of mystical thing going on, but there's no line up at any point which explains what's special about Marian.
And it's also weird because, again, it's this odd little subplot that we don't need, right? Because we could justify the forced marriage just by virtue of her royal blood and the fact that she has this connection to the king. That it would be like a marriage that would elevate his standing.
If we're going to go the full magic route about royal blood and all that sort of stuff, like, have that in it completely. Like, there's some sort of rite that needs to be continued. Don't not just have like a witch in the background. It's like, I'm reading the runes. The painted man's going to kill me. We have to do it by the equinox.
Right, and that's again the problem, is that you have all of these subplots that are underdeveloped to such an extent that they don't need to be there at all.
Yeah.
And that, in fact, they kind of detract. So they're doing this, like, forced marriage where literally, like, he puts his hand over her mouth and is like, she consents. And I'm like, no, this is never going to stand up in an ecclesiastical court. This marriage is going to get annulled, but okay. And meanwhile, Robin and Azim are trying to break through, and, like, they're using a nice statue as a battering ram, and I find this very upsetting. Robin then breaks through a very nice window. So
they don't know it's a nice medieval statue. It's just a statue to them.
That's true. But it's a nice statue that, like, somebody worked hard on.
It's true. Somebody did work hard on it.
That's somebody's work of art. So they're, like, ruining this statue to get into the room. Then Robin also ruins a perfectly nice window to get into the room.
Using a catapult to catapult himself through as well is another thing that happens in this movie.
Oh, yes, the catapult. And I'm like, I feel like that would not work.
No, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Like, even if you hit where you're landing, you're going... Like, yes, at the very top of your apex, you're not going to be moving that fast vertically, but
yeah,
you're still going to have your horizontal speed, and if you hit that window, is it going to hurt? Shit going to hurt.
Did I make this up, or do we actually have Christian Slater with, like, the movie's one F-bomb there, too, where he catapults him over and is like, fuck me, he cleared it.
Yeah, something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think Slater is the only fuck in the movie.
Yeah, because he's so cool.
Yeah, we have more of this podcast than in the film. Anyway, everybody's fighting. I actually think the best fight is the priest fight with the bishop and Friar Tuck, which ends with the Friar Tuck's basically, like, shoving gold at him and then, like, to, like, weigh him down as he pushes him out the window, which ends with 30 pieces of silver to pay the devil on your way to hell.
I'm not cutting that out. Everybody, that wasn't cut out, right? So just remind Sarah she said that.
So Robin eventually manages to kill Nottingham. Azim kills the witch. Robin and Marian basically, like, make out over Nottingham's corpse.
Yeah, this is the thing, is Nottingham shows himself to be almost a match for Robin in a sword fight. Which is...
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, he's good.
I can't take him serious based on the way his character's been portrayed for the entire movie. So I'm watching it going, this isn't going to be much of a fight. Whereas when Rochefort is fighting...
Yeah,
D'Artagnan at the end of the Three Musketeers, you legitimately think Rochefort's going to kick this kid's ass, because Rochefort is good and scary and a good villain. Whereas I'm not saying the Sheriff of Nottingham's not a good villain, but I don't take him as a threat. So then when he's suddenly a threat, you're like, wait, what? No, this comes out of nowhere. This is the guy who's like, cancel Christmas.
Well, great. Because again, it's like it's like the director told Kevin Costner he's in one movie, and he told Alan Rickman he's in a completely different movie.
Yeah.
And so, like, and then they come together in this fight, and it's like, what?
This could be like
This is actually like a legit fight.
That story that they always tell about Alan Rickman when he's recording Snape, is that I talked to J.K. Rowling and she told me where their character is going to go, so I played him with knowledge that no one else had. Like, I get it, Alan. Don't believe you. don't believe that story at all, because when I watch the Harry Potter movies, you're a dick in the first one and you're a dick in the last one.
But on the other hand, that is how I would play him if I had the knowledge of the end, because Snape is, best case scenario, a stalker who is mad that a woman wouldn't fuck him after he called him a racial slur.
Wait, hold on a second.
Conclusion,
the last time I was on, we talked about Harry Potter movies for most of the thing. So let's not do
yes,
that. And let's get to the end
We're not
where
doing that.
Robin and Marian are... by the way, the best kill in the movie, to me, is Azim kicking in the door and then throwing his scimitar through the air to impale the witch.
Yes, that was very good.
It's a good kill. That's a good kill, guys.
Yeah, it's a good kill. And there's a lot of drama with Robin killing the sheriff, because he ultimately does so with this dagger, which, like, it's a whole thing. Like, the sheriff had given Marian that dagger, and then
Marian
she
had
gave
given
it to him.
and
like,
he stuck it in his
and
belt.
he's like, ah! Yeah. And he's like, ah, I gave you this. It's, like, clearly the look on his face.
Oh.
Which is, like, bizarre, because it's not like he actually, like, thought she was in love with him, and so the, like, hurt feelings is, like, sort of bizarre. But I kind of like it. I don't know.
No,
I still like him in this movie, even though it's a weird, like, set of performance choices. I still really like him.
I still really
I
like
him
this
more
movie.
than Kevin Costner is the problem.
I think he's great. I think the movie's great.
Yeah.
I just think that he's in a different movie to everybody else. And sometimes you get that. Like, nobody else is in a comedy movie. Alan Rickman is given an over-the-top comedy performance. Yeah. And it's really good. His performance is really good, because you take the scenes in isolation, like, this is great. But then
they're great.
Then the next scene is Robin having a fight in the river, which, by the way, is 2 feet deep. Like, he's sounding the river with a big stick.
And it's like, oh no, he drowned. He drowned in like 1.5 feet of water.
It's just 2 feet here. We could just literally walk across. We're horses. We can swim. Anyway, so really good. Just damn you, Nottingham, for being the wrong performance.
And we end, they get married, and Richard shows up, surprised Sean Connery at the end to say that I object unless I can give away the bride. How's my Sean Connery?
That was good. Just give her a little love slap.
Oh God. Sean Connery, everybody's favorite pervy dad from First Night.
I was about to say he's passed away, actually. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he has.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. Anyway, so he does that. They get married. Everybody's very happy. The end.
Azim, I'm assuming, does no longer have a life debt to Robin.
Yes, he fulfilled it by having killed the witch.
Good. And he's not into Richard the Lionheart.
Yeah. He's the only one. Everybody else is like, and he's the only one who's kind of like giving him some side eye, and I'm like, yeah, fair.
But
this dude like fucking invaded your country.
He really does seem like he's like, oh look, it's Sean Connery. He's the way everyone else is responding. And I think in Men in Tights, don't they have a similar scene where Richard the Lionheart shows up?
I think so.
But it's Patrick Stewart. And it's just like, I'm renowned British actor Patrick Stewart. like that's exactly what this is like. Again, except this isn't done for comedy. It's done for, effect.
Right. Yeah. So with that, we can now move into our next segment where they talk about what they got right and what they got wrong, which is called...
What'd you call it? Where it falls so...
I would call it that.
I just made myself giggle every time.
So I'll start with a couple of things that they got right, because then there's a lot of things that they didn't get right. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say, so he, at the beginning, he ends up in England, and it's 4 months later. Travel to and from Jerusalem is quite lengthy and often beset by various seasonal delays, and 4 months seems plausible as an amount of time it might take. So, good job. Also, I think a more or less decent job that Wolf, Little John's son, is put under arrest for poaching. And, that makes sense. Poaching is a pretty common offense A lot of the land in England is forests that are kind of put under royal or other protection, and regular people aren't allowed to hunt in them.
And that was going on. Like, Irish people were getting strung up and hung for poaching as late as 1870, 1880.
Oh, yeah. So the fact that he, A, is doing this, and B, that there would potentially be a pretty harsh punishment is not entirely out of the ordinary. So I'd say that's all fair. Then there's some stuff that's kind of so-so. So first I will talk about there's the Third Crusade. We have an opening crawl that says, 800 years ago, Richard the Lionheart, King of England, led the Third Great Crusade to reclaim the Holy Land from the Turks. Most of the young English noblemen who flocked to his banner never returned home. We start off okay. It is 800 years ago. This movie came out in 1991, and they left in 1190, precisely 801 years before the film was released.
Nice.
Good job. The Turks, not so much. They are trying to take Jerusalem not from the Turks, but from the Ayyubid Sultan Saladin, who is of Kurdish background. He is not Turkish. There is a Turkish polity, the Seljuk Turkish Sultanate of Rum, but this is a completely different polity, and there's some kind of fights that happen between the Turks and the Crusaders, who are under the leadership of Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, but that's not actually who's holding Jerusalem. So, or the Holy Land. Because everybody does like this little, like, oh, Robin Hood, it's like, is of the time when there was a crusade, so maybe he's a crusader. And it's like this choice that, like, I actually find sort of odd, but it's often made. And I don't actually think it's in, I haven't checked, but I don't think that's actually something that's in the original legends. I think that's a modern, like, ooh, these things are at the same time. But at least that's better. Yeah.
The original version that I read of Robin Hood does not have anything about Crusades.
Yeah, no, that was my...
Yeah, he falls... Like, it's about King Richard the Lionheart. It's because it's set at the time it's about King Richard. But it's not... The Crusades are not linked to it in any way. It's just, while he was away, somebody is trying to take things. It's not Robin was away at the Crusades, and when he comes back, that stuff. Robin is just a low-level... in the first version, I'm trying to think, God, it's been... I don't know how many versions of Robin Hood I've read at this age. But the very, very first ones, he's not even a nobleman. He's just a dude.
Right.
Yeah. He stands up for the poor.
Later that he gets turned into a nobleman. It's later that it becomes like, oh, he must have been a nobleman to have people follow him like that. For us to like him.
The same as King Arthur had to have been a Roman.
Right. And of course, also, the reason Richard's gone so long is ultimately not actually the Crusades. It's that he gets taken captive and is being held for ransom by, ultimately, the Holy Roman Emperor for several years. And so, like, the reason he's gone for such a lengthy period of time isn't even entirely due to the Crusades. And that's the whole kind of problem that comes up in a lot of these Robin Hood stories, the fact that he's gone for so long, and that there's kind of issues with the fact that essentially you don't have a king.
Yeah.
It's also, I would say, not that great of a crusade for a couple reasons. First of all, from a modern perspective, I don't think any of the crusades are so great, because they're like, hey, we, like, Christian Europeans are gonna, like, take your land because we don't like your religion. So, like, kind of fuck that. And then also, this crusade in particular is kind of a disappointment in that the goal is to retake Jerusalem, which had been lost 7 years before this movie takes place, I think, if I'm remembering the dates.
Was it lost because of the actions of Kingdom of Heaven?
Yes. They watch Kingdom of Heaven and they're like, no, you don't deserve
this shit. We're taking Jerusalem now.
And so the goal is then to retake Jerusalem, and that's why you have this crusade, and they don't retake Jerusalem, although they do have some other important successes. And so in the grand scheme of things, like, it's in some ways not even an entirely successful or great crusade. I also just want to note that in this prison, which is clearly supposed to be a, like, Muslim prison, the guy has an aggressively, like, English Cockney accent.
It's very funny. Get over here!
Like, he sounds more English than Kevin Costner.
Cut his hand off!
So that is entertaining.
He sounds very similar to Beowulf.
Yes.
But of course, I'm talking about sexy Beowulf.
Oh yes, always sexy Beowulf with his many penises and things definitely covering his penis. Speaking of how ungenerous I am, now I'm going to be an asshole about material culture in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, we have a couple of appearances of the Bayeux Tapestry, so it's included first in the opening credits. This is, okay, at the very least, like, I'll give them this, the Bayeux Tapestry exists by this point. It was completed in the 1070s. It, however, has nothing to do with Robin Hood.
No.
And the real problem is that later we see Marian, and she's embroidering the Bayeux Tapestry, which was finished 120 years earlier. It's like I'm going to put Robin in this.
Also, that's another thing. The credits are really long in this.
They are really long.
And I know
you could cut the credits too, and that would contribute to this movie being like 90 minutes.
From the time period, like with lots of credits. But I watched this today. I watched something else during the week. Oh yeah, I watched Spider-Man from 2002 for the first time. So it's like obviously a Marvel movie or whatever. And I tuned in to watch it, and the credits on that are incredibly, crazy long. Like,
yeah.
And it's just constantly flicking through the things and like, and it's like, I get it, there's spider webs and there's DNA mixed in with it and stuff. It's still like going, are we 7 minutes in and it's just credits?
Right.
Like, thank God most movies shoot. I don't mind a good credit sequence, and I like credits showing up at the start of a movie. And I like the way that they were, that nowadays, they're usually diegetically in there. They'll just like show up on the side of a building, right. It'll be directed by, and it'll be part of the scene or whatever.
Or like in Watchmen, where they have that really interesting credit sequence and the movie goes way downhill from there. We also have the assorted filming locations, and I will say, the filming locations are lovely, and it's cool that they filmed on location. Carmen agrees, which is why she's jumping up on my lap. But, as usual, the filming locations are basically, well, this is medieval. So Nottingham's exterior is the fortress of the Cité de Carcassonne in southern France. And while parts of it would have been in existence, the fortress was heavily restored in the 19th century by Viollet-le-Duc in basically one of his, I think it should have looked like this sort of restorations. So it probably didn't quite look like that in the 12th century. We also have Locksley Castle is a ruined 14th century castle, and Marian's home is 13th century. So, mixed bag there.
But at least they made an effort. At least they are,
yeah.
One thing I would say about them is, when they go to Marian's castle, it looks like a castle that might have existed in that rough time frame. Whereas, there are versions of it, in the other version of Robin Hood we watched, the Ridley Scott version, where they go to Marian's castle. And it's clearly 18th century, 16th, 17th,
oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's the 1700s, so 18th century. And you're like, no, wait, well, of course not. That is not a medieval castle. The rooms are huge. They couldn't make rooms that large back in the time because, they didn't have building technologies to do it.
Right. These at least, these are exteriors that make sense and that are, I think, solid filming locations that people who aren't assholes like me would probably, not find incongruous. And I actually do also think they did a pretty good job at interiors, so I appreciate that the church interior, and that was done on a set, is mostly a kind of Romanesque in look, which works because we're still in a period where there are some Gothic churches being built, but we still haven't entered the period where most churches would be Gothic in style. So
the only thing missing is that if I'm going to be looking at a Romanesque style church, I want to see the tower look like a penis.
Right. That is true. You got to have that penis tower, and we do not have the penis tower because we only have the interior,
which is a crying shame. And that's also not a joke. For obviously there are people who are listening who understand and know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those of you who don't know what a Romanesque church they look like penises. They have the round
I mean,
towers.
they don't all look like penises.
Every single one of them, Sarah.
Some of them, particularly in Andorra, look like penises.
The ones in Andorra might as well be just a collection of dicks on the mountain. Which I'm not complaining about, because they're good.
They're very attractive, though. We then, however, do have some slightly odd additions. So in this lovely Romanesque church, we've got this, like, dumb fucking Baroque sculpture, which is ridiculous.
Sarah, every time it comes up, I genuinely think you hate anything Baroque. It's like...
I do. I absolutely hate anything Baroque.
Shit!
If it's not Baroque, don't fix it.
Oh, Sarah.
But no, Baroque is hideous. I'm sorry. It's like elaborate. It's like overly elaborate to the point of like self-parody, but they take it seriously, and I don't like it as a style.
Sorry, I'm laughing at Tim. It's not Baroque. Don't fix it.
So then we've got Robin's father has a portrait of his son, which looks like it was done by Egon Schiele, who's like a, 19th century Austrian artist, and it's a weird choice. And then Nottingham has this bust of himself, which is at best Renaissance and arguably Baroque.
Yeah, it is.
It's a
weird bust. Like, it's one of those plot points which is just, stop. No, come on. Stop it.
No. Right. So, yeah. So we're not great on... We're kind of, we're so-so. We're overall not great, but we've got a few bright spots in our material culture. But then we have the telescope. They would not have... Even in the Islamic world, they did not have telescopes at this period.
Not telescopes that he can take apart and put back together himself. Because earlier in that scene, he's using...
yes.
It's a convex lens, and he's using it to look at his own beard. Which, yes, if you had a perfect lens, you can do, but...
Right. And they did actually have, I think, pretty decent corrective lenses by this period in the Islamic world in particular. Mm-hmm. They would have had the ability to make pretty successful lenses by the 11th century, but they don't have this kind of telescope that's going to be able to, like, be set up to see quite that distance that effectively. The kind of like putting it apart, taking it back to, however you say that in English, taking it apart and putting it back together, and that kind of like the long structure, how telescopes look. I'm trying to mime a telescope.
Yeah, because the problem is with it this is where the physics teacher can come in. It's very specific locations for what he wants to do, right? So he's got basically a leather pouch or leather script, even as maybe you'd call it, that he's going to fold up and then tie and then have a lens at either end, which is brilliant. Except that you have no way to reposition the lenses, which means you would only be focused on one point, one distance away from you, which is no good, because if something's coming towards you, you're not going to be in focus the entire time. You're only going to be able to focus on something which is 100 meters away or 150 meters away, whatever it is you happen to have it set up. So it's a weird way to have it positioned, because even if you are going to make a telescope, even the very first telescopes, they had adjustable levels. Like, they weren't just, here's two lenses.
Yeah. So, yes, and my understanding is that telescopes of this kind are 17th century in terms of the earliest thing that would be even slightly parallel to this. Finally, I will just have my one bitch about names, because I always bitch about names, which is that Marian's servants are Sarah and Rebecca, because she thinks she's in the fucking Bible, I guess.
Yeah.
These kinds of biblical, what Christians would call the Old Testament names, are not at all popular.
Sorry, what do you call the Old Testament?
The Hebrew Bible. Because we don't have we don't think there's a New Testament, so it's not old.
Sure, whatever. Whatever, Sarah. Let's move on to the next bit. Historia et veritas. Also, just for the record, for anyone listening, I'm not religious. Just in case anyone's like, Jesus, he's so strongly Christian, that Oliver Brady. I don't give a shit. I'm a physicist. Giant space god out there is looking after me. Anyway, Historia et Veritas, where we look at a real historical event, person, or phenomenon. And Sarah, I think you want to talk about the mystical black man in this movie.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about some things related to Morgan Freeman's character, particularly because this film very intensely emphasizes his blackness and people's reaction to it. And I wanted to talk about this in particular, in part because, of course, we're at yet another moment when the white supremacists are at it again, appropriating the Middle Ages, one of our fun, friendly gentlemen entering the White House, or not the White House, sorry, they love the White House, entering the Capitol building in the coup the other day, had a series of Viking-inspired tattoos, as well as a little horned helmet, because he missed the bit in class where they taught him the Vikings didn't actually wear horned helmets. So I wanted to talk about race and blackness in the medieval world, and just a couple of notes that I wanted to mention that I am particularly indebted here to the work of Geraldine Heng, and I highly recommend her book, The Invention of Race in the European Middle Ages. And also, just worth mentioning, we are white people who are talking about this, and that, of course, does influence our perspective.
Just white people, and by white, Sarah means I'm glowing in the dark. Sarah at least has sallow skin and can pass for some vague European things. Nobody's looking at me, he's not going, I am as white as it comes. So I like to think that I'm pretty good on race relations, but sometimes I will say stuff which is just fucking flat out wrong. And I genuinely don't mean any... I don't mean any harm in it, but if I do say something which comes out, feel free to comment on it, because I'm always open to learning, and I'm always open to realizing that, talking shit, even when you're trying to be funny, is not sometimes the best thing to do. So if I seem like I'm quiet at this point, it's one, because I just sent a link to Sarah on how to get the look of our friend who sat in the Capitol building, and two, it's just because I don't want to sound like an idiot at this point.
Yes, well, so I, of course, am also somebody who benefits from white privilege, but I am going to at least try to kind of do justice to what we know about blackness in the medieval world. So first of all, there are black people in the Middle Ages, including in Europe and other non-white people as well, even in a place like England, which is usually assumed to be a completely racially, ethnically homogenous state. So, first of all, they would have existed. Second, despite the frequent racist appropriations of the medieval past, people in the Middle Ages weren't white supremacists, in part because they didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about themselves as white. Whiteness isn't an identity. It only becomes so in the modern period. There is, however, a legacy of talking about blackness in a variety of ways, which are not all necessarily super positive. So I will just start that there are some neutral or positive depictions of blackness. So, for example, the figure of Saint Maurice, who is a knight martyr who is traditionally depicted as being black, and is, supposed to be the great guy, one of your great martyr knights. And we also have one of the three magi, Balthazar, is traditionally depicted as black in a lot of medieval visuals.
Sarah, can I just ask a question? You just mentioned that...
Yeah.
So race, identifying as race, is a modern phenomenon. When would that have started?
Mm-hmm. I would say really kind of 15th, 16th century, but in terms of a lot of the kind of specific discourses about race that would be most familiar today, a lot of those are actually even much more modern. I mean, a lot of those are coming out of rhetoric that's really 19th century. Yeah. So it's really, race isn't exactly a medieval phenomenon, but there is a lot of conversation that's happening now about the extent to which they're sort of developing certain kinds of racial thinking in the medieval world.
Yeah, and
essentially
around about this time, so if we take Turks to represent, I was going to say the darker skinned people of the time, right? But there were definitely, the Ottoman Empire was involved with Europe, so when you say there were definitely people around, that was definitely something that was happening. But also incursions from North Africa into Europe were happening and vice versa. Like, I mean, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, there's less than, 150 miles or something between the Iberian Peninsula and the mainland of North Africa. Like, people were traveling between the two.
Right, exactly. And so we're still at this period where before the Ottoman Empire a bit, but there are still relationships of various kind, some hostile and some not, with various Muslim-ruled polities where people are of a variety of ethnic backgrounds. Yeah. And and as you mentioned, North Africa, at this point we have essentially North Africans or people of North African background ruling much of or parts of the Iberian Peninsula. And so again, and so in the Iberian Peninsula in particular, there is an immense amount of, kind of ethnic diversity. But people traveled, people moved around. And so part of this is also that the idea of there being this like utter shock at the concept of a Black person doesn't in fact seem quite right to me, given that.
Yeah, it does seem strange in the movie. And it's weird because in many ways, it's great that they have this character in the movie, because a lot of Robin Hood adaptations are genuinely Robin Hood so white. I mean, every single character is a white person in pretty much every adaptation before this point. So for them to have Black people in it is good, or a Black person in it. It's weird that they're making it to the point it's like, yes, put him in, but also other him throughout the movie because nobody seems to know what he is.
Right.
Like, don't touch the woman's stomach when she's pregnant. You're going to do something to the baby. Like, come on. Like,
yeah.
They weren't going to be at that point where, you're going to do your effectively mysticism onto this child.
Right. And it's also interesting because I believe this is actually the first example we have of Robin Hood essentially having a Black kind of sidekick character. And that then becomes this kind of interesting constant in a lot of Robin Hood adaptations. So, I mean, for example, that in the relatively recent Robin Hood, we've got Jamie Foxx now playing basically the same, essentially kind of magical Black
effectively
role.
The same character. I am going to show you ninja skills.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it does introduce what could be some much needed representation into stories of the medieval world, which in general are often overly white. But in this film in particular, there's this ways in which it's kind of getting into this kind of magical Black man trope, as well as the kind of constant emphasis on the fact that he is other, and that's to some extent, the kind of most prominent aspect of his character is the fact that he is seen as other. The other things that I wanted to note are that there is some amount of negative discourse that we do have in the real Middle Ages about Blackness at this point. So essentially, allegorically, Blackness is often associated with sin, and sometimes even going so far as to be associated with kind of the devil or with the demonic. And so sometimes when you have people who are portrayed as being dark-skinned, as with the case of Maurice or with Balthazar, it's essentially a neutral choice. But in other cases, it's very, as based on art historians' analyses, in other cases, it seems to be a choice that's made to demonstrate that this person is sinful, or this person is non-Christian and has not been redeemed and needs to be saved or redeemed, or even, as I said, that this person should be kind of associated with the demonic in some way.
Now, when you say that, when art historians are going back through this now, is there any chance? Obviously, it's not, and I'm not a historian, and I don't want to besmirch historians and how they make up all their stories, but or every single one of them. But is there a chance that there's an unconscious bias that they're coming at it with a modern view on things? They're like, oh, this character is represented as Black in this story because they represent sin, but they're actually looking at it with the eyes of a 2015, 2016 person who's interpreting as, oh, well, Black is bad. So therefore, even back in the medieval period, the reason that they've called painted this demon black is because black represents sin or whatever. Is there a chance that that's happening, or it just so happens to be that they use black because black stood out more in the picture?
I would say it's probably a little of each, that there certainly are examples where people have kind of read in blackness where it's not there. So, for example, that Tolkien actually made the weird choice in an essay he wrote to interpret Grendel as black, something that is not actually ever explicitly stated in the poem. And so there's that kind of weird modern mapping of ideas about race onto medieval texts and images. That is sometimes something we do see. But there are also, I would say, cases in which at least I can say that the arguments I've read have felt very convincing for arguing that at least it's not always necessarily that this person is demonic, but that actually even, for example, that there are these weird, like, this person is black and then they got baptized and now they're white.
Oh my God. Wash away the sin, guys.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of discourse does exist. It's just that there's not always a kind of clear mapping, I think, in medieval imaginations between that kind of ideology with an actual human black person. Like, I don't think that the fact that you have this kind of discourse necessarily means that real medieval people would always necessarily look at a person who is of darker skin and assume based on that they're in some ways sinful.
Oh, I get you. So even though they're representing the sin or the non-religious thing as black, it's not associated with their skin tone. It's more reflection on their purity. So you're not pure until you are baptized, then suddenly you are baptized, you're white. It's not you are a black person, therefore you have more sin than a white person.
Right.
I get you, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there's also, I mean, there's different kinds of kind of, competing discourses. And obviously, medieval people aren't a monolith, and there's some expressions of this kind of ideology that kind of seem more iffy than others. But I would say overall, we ultimately don't actually have quite as kind of overall negative a discourse about blackness as we actually do argue, or about blackness as actually something that is, a person's ethnicity or, ancestry. I think that we actually don't have anywhere near as vitriolic a discourse about that in the Middle Ages as we do in, say, the 17th or the 19th century.
Yeah. And when did, and this is not changing the subject too much, because, well, actually, now that I think about it, it is changing the subject a lot. And I don't mean it to come across that way. It's just because I happen to be reading the next paragraph that you've written. So this idea of black people being different to us, the idea of black people being lesser than us or whatever it happens to be. When did that also come in for other religions as opposed to other skin colors? So the idea that Jews were somehow lesser, like when was that a thing that was around in?
Oh, that's early. Yeah, like that's early.
Yeah.
So, because that's the thing is that I would say the most crucial category of difference in the medieval world isn't actually skin tone or that kind of ethnicity, it's religion. And so the discourses that are actually much more vitriolic and are much more like, well, this person is completely irredeemable and evil and can never be saved. And even if you get baptized, like maybe you're still a little bit of a problem. That's mostly focused on, I would say, actually, in some ways, predominantly Jews and secondarily Muslims.
Yeah. So that was more, so let's just call it racism because it is, right? But the racism was much more sectarian focused as opposed to skin color focused at this time, or at that time.
Yeah, that if you're talking about certainly at least the kind of origins of racial thinking in the Middle Ages, I think that you actually arguably can see something that sounds more like modern racism in discourse about Jews than you actually have in discourse about blackness. And in many ways, I would say the kind of rise of anti-black racism and the kind of construction of whiteness versus blackness as kind of crucial to European identities that really is something I think that comes very much with the mass enslavement of Black Africans, which doesn't happen until the 16th century.
Yeah, and that's what it's always felt that way when I'm watching these movies, that there's, like, of all of the things that they try to put in, they put in these prevailing thoughts that are 500, 600 years too late, which is Black people are lesser. I'm distrustful of this person because they're a different skin color, which might not necessarily have been the point at the time. So, for example, if people in 1190 saw a Black person like Morgan Freeman, they wouldn't automatically assume that there was something wrong with them. If they found out he was a Muslim, they might be like,
then that would be more of a problem.
Yes, but not he's Black, so therefore I'm not even going to offer him a drink. Like that, and that's the kind of way it's represented in the movie, is just by looking at him, these people hate him and are distrustful of him. And
they're like segregationists who won't drink out of the same water fountain as him, which is like essentially
that's essentially how they've represented it. They're not even going to offer him the drink. Yeah.
And this is very much something that I don't think this movie is intentionally white supremacist. I think that the movie is trying to be like, look, diversity, in the very, like, 90s sort of way, which is obviously problematic in itself. But it feels especially dangerous now to present the Middle Ages in this way, because it ultimately gives credence to these white supremacist claims that basically we love the Middle Ages because we as white supremacists think that the Middle Ages was this, like, period of racial purity where if, God forbid, one Black person showed up, like, we'd, like, quickly, get rid of them, I guess.
Yeah. And that is the problem, is that it's represented in... No, the problem is that these people are scumbags, right? But what's leading into them being scumbags is that every time they watch a movie or play a video game where they're representing a Viking or to see Vikings represented, it's an homogenized society where everybody is white and a Black person comes in and suddenly they have, we're a bit nervous about this person.
Right, and I think these people would be scumbags no matter what. I don't think this movie, these movies are making them scumbags.
It's reinforcing their prejudices.
It's reinforcing, and it's also giving them a discourse that they could use. And I actually do think that it's important to note there actually was a couple of years ago this article about this person who basically was like, I was a white supremacist, and then I went to college and I took a medieval studies course, and I realized that, like, the history of the Middle Ages isn't, like, the history of white supremacy and this, like, grand old, like, period of, like, the great white man. And learning that medieval history is something that I think, especially when you're talking about people who are young and impressionable who might have these kind of ideas, I think learning that they're wrong could have some positive effect in perhaps making them rethink their ideologies. So, all this to say, I don't think that people would have been quite as weirdly, modernly racist as they were in this movie if a real Black man showed up in 12th century England.
And definitely not if a mystical Black man had showed up who does literally nothing but good for the entire movie, and still, by the end, people are like, "Oh, that guy's talking to us."
How dare he? So, at this point, we can now move into our next segment, where we come up with a film or show inspired by this one, a segment called...
Fabula Nostra. Now, this is where we take the title of the movie and then come up with our own version of the film. Now, the last regular episode, back when I was the co-host that we did, was Robin Hood. The 2018 one, which is like an allegory for the war on terror in Iraq or something, which is pretty good. And then I said that my version of the movie would be an adaptation of Morning Star, the David Gemmell novel, which is a retelling of Robin Hood involving vampires and stuff. Which, by the way, I bought a copy for Sarah, and it's sitting on my shelf in the sitting room in there. It's like, it's literally on the inside. It's got, to Sarah, this shit has vampires in it, Ollie, right? which is it's a brilliant book, and I highly recommend it, but I'm not going to retread that. So even though my first instinct is anytime somebody says, do you want to make a version of Robin Hood, I'm like, yeah, what about the one with vampires in it? Where he fights the vampires. because it's Robin Hood. And he's like good with an arrow, bow and arrow and stuff like this here, so he puts like silver on them, so it's the vampires. And it's really good writing and stuff, but no, not going to do that. Even though, the back of your minds, guys, vampires. Right, Robin Hood in the woods fighting vampires. So very cool. I'm going to look at the subtitle of this, which is Prince of Thieves. Right, and I would like to make a version of this movie which does not involve Robin of Locksley being the sire of Locksley. Right, I'm going to have him just be a regular dude who sees Nottingham doing a bunch of shit, taxing the poor, because that's the real story behind Robin Hood is that's OG Robin Hood taxing everybody, right? So it's an anti-tax movie or story. It's always been an anti-tax movie, right? Or anti-tax story. So I would like to make a movie version of this where it's a small guy, a guy who's getting taxed, who suddenly has his farm taken away from him. And as an Irish person, this is, it's what we all think about when we go back and we worry about the great hunger, as we call it. You guys call it the famine. Mm-hmm. There was no famine. Ireland is still one crop failed. It's not a famine if potatoes fail. If you can still grow lettuces, you're just not allowed to eat them because certain other people won't allow you to, and they just try to starve you to death, right? But
English.
When you think about that, it's all caused by the landowners forcing the peasants to give away all of their money. So I would like to see a version of this movie where he rises to the idea of being the Prince of Thieves, but the reality is he's literally just a thief. He's not robbing from the rich to give to the poor. He's robbing from the rich. Eventually, he ends up giving it to the poor and spreading it around because something happens. Maybe he sees a child die. Right? I'm not a screenwriter, but if I was, a child would die. Right? So he sees a child die from starvation. He's like, "Holy shit! I'm no better than the Sheriff of Nottingham. I'm no better than Guy the Gizborne. What if I take the stuff that I steal and I start spreading it around?" Right? So there's a scene in this movie where the Sheriff of Nottingham doesn't understand that Robin is robbing him. He is becoming in turn more cruel to make up for his losses. But because Robin is giving it to the people, they're all happy with Robin because he's like actually giving the money. And like there's a little allegory there for people working in companies, and even though the companies are shit, because they're getting paid by the company, they'll go to the bat to defend them, like, right? And so you'd hear people who were like still defending Enron 2 years after they'd caused one of the biggest financial collapses in the world because they were working for Enron.
Well, and Amazon.
Exactly, right? So what I'm thinking is the idea is that Robin is playing a character who is just a scumbag, just a thief who is out looking after himself. And then he falls into this do-gooding way as opposed to, I have to come back and fight for the lands of my father. Like, I don't need any of that stuff. Maid Marian can literally, you know what? Let's just still leave her as a woman who is, let's just say she's not a maid. Let's just say she's been around the blocks there, right? So she's a popular lady, but she comes from good stock, right? Because, we have to have some reason for her to be fighting with Sheriff, and Sheriff of Nottingham's not going to be chasing after a lowly wench, right? So let's just have her be somebody that is constantly trying to help the poor, just as a nice person. She's a nice human being, right? So in my version of the story, Robin is street level scumbag who something bad happens and he then goes, right, well, I'm going to help the poor. The poor start putting him up as a hero. Sheriff of Nottingham just sees him as this figurehead, and I need to take down this figurehead. He's inciting a rebellion against my reign. We don't even need Richard Lionheart. Keep it as a problem for Nottingham in the woods of Nottingham, because people, the Sheriff of Nottingham, he's not trying to be king. He just wants to keep control of his district, and then anybody who's coming in is getting taxed by Robin Hood, right? Because Robin is like actually asking them to pay a toll to go on the road, right? So he's not stealing them of all their money. He's taking 20% of their money. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's a tithe like this here, right? And eventually he starts going after the church, whatever it happens to be, right? So it's a street level story about Robin Hood being a thief, who eventually turns to good because he sees what's actually happening to other people and he realizes that he's no better than them. Falls in love with Maid Marian, who falls in love with him. There's shenanigans where the sheriff of Nottingham wants to marry her because her dad has a big castle and he wants to have a bigger castle. He's not a nobleman, he's just a sheriff, but he's looking for power. We can have Guy the Gizborne being played by somebody who's a badass and, you know, can sword fight with him and stuff like this here, so we get loads of action. So basically, street level story, Robin, Prince of Thieves, and how he rises up to the ranks and becomes famous. He doesn't even have to fight, like, at the end. He can be an outlaw, he can just go off and we can have a series about it, right? So, I would like to have Robin, played by Carl Urban, from Lord of the Rings and various other things. I happen to have been watching The Boys this week, and he does a possible British accent. And he's also a big enough dude that you could see him being a hardy bastard. He looks the part. He can play dirty. He can play clean. I appreciate him. I think he's a really good actor. I think because he's in his 30s, we should cast a Maid Marian. And maybe then the fact that she's still known as Maid Marian makes sense for her to be in her 30s and not married, right?
Right.
So let's just think of an actress in her 30s who's, you know, Carl Urban level attractive. Let's just say Famke Portenta, right? Just because I like her and she's pretty. She's not English at all. I don't think I've ever seen her do an English accent, but she's the kind of character or actress that I'm thinking of for this role. I mean, obviously we can cast, you know, let's just say, what's the name of the actress from Rogue One?
Felicity
Jones. Do you know what? There we go. It's Felicity Jones. That's who I'm going to cast because she looks like Franca Potenta, but she's English, right? And also, I think she's brilliant. And then the sheriff of Nottingham, I want to be played by somebody who's a little bit older, so let's just think in his 40s. But I also because I try to cast him in all these movies, I think Fassbender would do a brilliant job of that because he looks like somebody who is an evil bastard, let's face it. Like, he just has that nasty look about him, right? He could play the sheriff, and then to play Guy, who's going to be the main antagonist physically, who's going to fight him, let's just pick... Let's Guy the Gizborne. Let's just say he's the French cousin of the king. And let's just say he's played by Jean Dujardin. You know, the guy from The Artist?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's a big enough dude. He can play dirty too when he wants to. And, you know, I can go with that there.
There you go.
So that's my main cast, and that's how I'd have it. All the rest of them, you can just fill out with character actors.
That sounds good.
Fine. It's good. So, street level, it's about him basically
that.
being a thief. And then he rises up to become a famous thief.
I would watch that. So I ignored the title entirely and decided to just, I just took a theme instead, which is that, so this movie could have, it does not, do something interesting with the fact that Marian is arguably somebody who's a powerful figure in her own right. Right? She's the king's cousin. She is a wealthy, independent landowner, right? I mean, it seems that she's the person who apparently is like essentially ruling as and exercising lordship over these lands now that her brother has been absent for a long time and is now dead.
Could you say the force is strong with her?
Yes, I might say the force is strong with her.
So.
It's a hint for casting. So I would really love a film that focuses on Marian, thinking of her as somebody who is this very wealthy landowner, and she was trying to use her position to help the poor in various ways. And to think about, so then she meets Robin, and I guess they'll fall in love or whatever. But Robin is going to be kind of a little bit of a side character. But that... she's really going to be the major character, but that it's going to be kind of thinking about essentially the fact that they are going at these same problems and they both care about these same issues, but in very different ways, with Robin obviously having his like rob the rich and to give to the poor thing, and Marian being somebody who works more, say, inside the system. And the two of them kind of disagreeing about why, essentially kind of which path is the right path, but, you know, they'll also, I guess, fall in love and work that all out eventually. So I am going to have Marian, because the force is strong with her, played by Daisy Ridley.
I can see.
And Robin as another Star Wars actor, but not the one you think. Robin is going to be played by Alden Ehrenreich.
Wait, who did you think we were going to think it was?
Oh, I don't know. Somebody who was actually in a movie with Daisy Ridley.
Oscar Isaac?
Yeah, I always cast Oscar Isaac.
I was going to say, as I was going to name Guy the Gizborne, I was like, I'm going to say Oscar Isaac, because I bet you Sarah wants to try and cast Oscar Isaac.
I know, I actually don't have Oscar Isaac. I'm going to cast as the Sheriff of Nottingham, and I'm actually going to skip all the marriage stuff, because I feel like the weird, like, sexual threat against women as, like, her main plot line, I'm like, I can kind of live without that as a trope. So I'm going to have the Sheriff of Nottingham, who is going to maybe be trying to deprive her of her lands, but, like, not in a romantic way. He's just, like, trying to, like, say, like I don't know, like, undermine her claim in some way. He is going to be played by Christoph Waltz.
Christoph Waltz, yeah. I can see.
Yeah. I am still going to have an Azim-style character, although he's going to, like, you know, be kind of there, and it's not going to be everybody constantly being like, why are you black? And he is going to be played by Michael B. Jordan, because who doesn't want to see Michael B. Jordan?
Yeah, you just want you should put an eye candy in now. Like, I mean, he's a great actor and stuff, but he's a beautiful man.
He's a great actor, and he's going to be decidedly not magical, but just a cool guy. And then finally, so as we've noted, I'm reading it. So as we noted, Marian in this movie has this servant who's named Sarah, and this is not, as I said, a name that Christian women would have in this particular time and place. There might, however, occasionally have been Jewish women who might have this name. So I'm going to have her have, say, a Jewish kind of, maybe sort of like local like merchant that she's kind of working with. And that's going to be her friend, who's going to be named Sarah, and she is going to be played by the very medieval Beanie Feldstein.
I just can't picture Beanie Feldstein in any movie other than Booksmart. I just can't do it.
I'm here for it. I think she would I think she's very talented, and I think she would do a great job dressed up in medieval garb.
I don't know. I like Beanie Feldstein. I think she's a really good actress, but I just don't know. I'm not sure if I'm by it. I don't know if I'd see Daisy Ridley and her as friends.
I think they'd like each other. I think they'd get on well.
I don't know. I think Daisy Ridley seems too aloof. Wait, hold on a second. She's an actress. She's playing a different character. What am I talking about?
But also, it's like it actually works that like maybe like she's a little bit aloof, and you know, because she's also like she's of higher status, so like they're sort of friends, but there's also like a kind of weird dynamic in some way in that she's Marian is a noble woman, and Sarah is not, but also the whole Christian Jewish thing. So that Beanie is somebody who, is fundamentally not of the same status as her. So they're kind of working together and they're sort of friends, but there is maybe a little bit of a remove in their relationship given the kind of differences in status that they have.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would watch that movie, Sarah.
Yeah. All right.
Which leads us to our last thing, which is where we get to give numbers to tell us how good a movie is. And I know loads of people move away from this there. They're also like, I don't like when people give numbers. Well, I'm giving a number. And I love giving a number for a movie because the number tells you how good that person thought the movie was. It's so a good idea. And
I like to ultimately be judgmental.
Exactly. And I love being judgmental. And that's what we call the estimatio, where we get to give it a rating. Sarah, since I'm the guest, I'm going to claim the right to go second. And that's mostly because I'm going to disagree with you when you give your score rating.
That is fair. So I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5.
Boo.
And I do want to have the caveat. This is an enjoyable movie. And if somebody were to tell me they wanted to watch a Robin Hood movie, I would tell them either this or the Disney. The animated one. Those would be the two that I would actually recommend.
I think that's a terrible movie.
I like it. It's charming.
I know people think it's charming, and that is one sexy fox, right? But I just know.
Sheriff of Nottingham's a wolf. It's great. So as I said, I would ultimately recommend this movie, but it's very 90s, right? Which means, first of all, gender, we're not great here. Race, we're really not great here. Why does it need to be 2.5 hours? This movie didn't need to be 2.5 hours. It would have been better if it wasn't 2.5 hours. It's just, as I said, ultimately I enjoyed it. Ultimately I would recommend it, but it is also a very 90s movie that has a collection of a lot of really kind of standard medieval tropes that I don't especially like. So it's fun. It's enjoyable. You know, it's a good comfort movie. But ultimately, I think it's a 3 out of 5 movie from the perspective of this podcast.
Yeah, no, I can see where you're getting those numbers from. I am going to give this a 4 out of 5. And the reason I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 is because I love this movie. I know I just spent almost the same length as the movie did shitting on the film. But that's mostly just because the stuff that's in it, each of the individual scenes is fine. It's just there's so many long scenes. And there's so much stuff that's added that doesn't need to be there. I said, if you cut out the entire Christian Slater plotline, he doesn't need to be there. Literally 100% doesn't need to be there. You take that out, the movie's suddenly less than 2 hours long, right? And if this movie is an hour and 55 minutes, I think it barrels along and does everything you want it to do, right? Yeah. The problem is it's just so damn long. And that's why I'm taking the half or the full start off it. Otherwise, I would give it a 5 out of 5. What I would say is, if you want to watch a movie from this time period that involves swords and stuff like this here, I would recommend the Robin Hood, the Three Musketeers we covered from 1993. Yeah. And also The Man in the Iron Mask, which myself and Sarah have watched. And we haven't covered on the podcast yet, but eventually I will be back to talk about it. Because it's just it's a rollicking good movie, right? And I get it that it's not Robin Hood, but if you're going to watch something that's just going to be fun for the time, I would say go watch either of those two movies. They're more fun, and they don't have the same bogged down in the middle, let's shoehorn in the stuff that doesn't need to be there. And that's the main problem I have with this movie. I would look, I've watched this maybe as many times as any other movie that I've watched, right? I mean, I always talk about people that say, like, Highlander's the movie I've seen the most, and it is. Dirty Dancing has to be number 2. I've seen that so many times because we only had like 4 videos when we were kids, and my sisters loved it, and I'll be honest with you, I loved it too. It's a really good movie, and we sat down and we used to watch it over and over and over again. But once I moved out and I was living as an adult on my own, this was, I think, the first DVD I purchased with my own money. Right? That's how much I enjoy this movie. So when I say 4 out of 5, it's a genuinely enjoyable movie. It's just when you're going back to watch it now in 2020, when you've got a mobile phone that has 700 games on it and Facebook and all of these things that you can look into, the bits that bog down really hold it back. But each of the individual scenes is fine. As much as I like the shit on Alan Rickman and how he's in a different movie, he's really, really good performance in it. It's a really good performance. It's well worth watching just to watch him. It's a shame to me that he feels like he's in a different movie. But yeah, 4 out of 5. I don't feel bad about giving it 4 out of 5. I know it's not, of the movies that you've covered, it's not in the top 10 quality wise, but it's definitely in my top 5 entertainment wise that I'm going to enjoy, and I will probably watch it more. I'm more likely to watch this than any other movie except possibly the Three Musketeers version we did. Or, obviously Tricks and Wire, which is the greatest. And I will say, I actually think that also, like, if we combined our ratings, I think that, like, a 3.5 out of 5 is actually probably, like... Yeah, I almost gave it a 3.5 because this... I just can't. It's a movie I enjoy too much to give it a 3.5. And I actually almost went up to 3.5, and I actually didn't, because I remembered I gave 13th Warrior a 3 out of 5, and I think this is actually, that's actually a better movie that I like more. I'll never forget that you only gave it a 3 out of 5. That's a 5-star movie if ever there was a 5-star movie. A movie doesn't have to be perfect to get 5 stars. It has to be perfect at doing what it's trying to do, and it's trying to make a little horror story based around Grand. Anyway, that's beside the point.
Yeah. But I will say, but that I think is a better movie and a movie that I like more and a movie that I have shown my students. And I gave that a 3 out of 5. So I was like, well, I can't give this higher.
Oh yeah, how did your students enjoy 13 Warrior? I remember you saying that they thought it was good, but not brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say they liked it. I think some of them liked it more than others. I think some of them really liked it and some of them were kind of so-so. They were all, however, appropriately disgusted by the spitbowl scene. And it was a true delight to be able to tell them that the spitbowl scene was real.
Oh, disgusting. Sarah?
Yeah?
Where can people find you on the internet? I'm running your podcast for you.
You can find me on Twitter, where I make bitchy political comments at Sarah If Decker, and also at Sarah If Decker on Instagram, where I post pictures of food. You can also find the podcast on Twitter at Media-eval Pod. You can join our Facebook group, and you can and should subscribe in your preferred podcatcher app and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Ollie, can we find you on the internet, or are you a ghost?
I'm pretty much a ghost because I don't do podcasts anymore.
Okay.
Although, Sarah, you've been on Judging Book Covers, and Megan from Judging Book Covers asked me to do a podcast with her, and I'm genuinely considering it.
Ooh,
except
fun.
that she asked me to do a podcast about the TV show Supernatural.
So you'd have to watch it?
Yeah, I'd have to watch it. I've never seen an episode. Guys, I've never seen an episode of Supernatural. So
I also have never seen an episode of Supernatural.
I would have to watch the show. And then she casually dropped into the chat. She was like, oh yeah, it's only 370 episodes. So at one, it's like 15, 16 seasons, apparently.
What?
Yeah.
Jesus!
Yes, I know. So I was thinking, like, at one episode a week, that's like 6 years. So, as much as I'm thinking about doing it, I'm assuming that I would be the third host out of 3, and that I would only show up every now and then, because I can't commit to 6 years of a podcast, even though I love Megan. Megan's the best. But, yeah, that could be something we might look at in the future. So look out for a Supernatural podcast with me and I think I technically got an Instagram with like 40 followers that I've never posted on. So if you're on Sarah's Instagram, look for. Have you followed me on Instagram, Sarah?
I think so.
So look for the blank one with my name on it. I don't even know what it is on. I don't know if you put an @ in front of them. I don't know anything about it. I just happen to have one. So feel free to come and be my friend on Instagram or however that works. I was going to leave with a joke at the end because I wanted to make the worst joke, but then Sarah made her, if it's not Baroque,
I made the
don't
worst
fix
joke.
it. But I am going to do this joke. So I'm going to play a character. I'm playing Robin Hood, right? So Robin Hood comes along and he sees his friend, and his friend's like, poor Jimmy, we'll call him. And Robin walks over and he goes, Jimmy, look what I got you. And he gives him like this thing of jewels and gems that Jimmy's never had before. And he gets it, and Jimmy looks and goes, oh my God, I'm rich. And Robin squints at him and goes, you're what? and that's the end of my joke.
This has been Media-eval. Thank you for listening. Ollie, thank you for joining me.
And Sarah froze, so I'm just going to wave at the camera and say bye.